In my youth, I did a lot of things that I'm not very proud of today, but I wanted to see other parts of the world, and I knew that I didn't have the discipline to be in the Navy, so I got jobs on various ships, working from one place to the next. I liked being out on the ocean quite a bit actually, but I mostly really liked visiting different places. However, while I was in Japan, I lost my job on one of these ships. I didn't have very much money at the time, and I didn't really have anywhere to stay in Japan either. While I was stranded in Osaka, I was able to get a job on a ship. I wasn't really happy about it though. I mean, the ship was sort of seedy. I don't want to tell you too much about what was going on, but I will let you know that it was a smuggling ship. The conditions on this particular ship were much different than the others I had worked on. The crew were just about the closest things to pirates that I could have imagined lived in that time period. But the scariest person on the ship was the captain. He was a surly man who only had one arm. He had a scraggly beard, and it almost seemed like he never changed his clothing. I also think he probably had read Treasure Island one too many times. He was very no-nonsense, barked orders at people, and didn't really seem to care too much for the people who worked under him. I mean, I guess in a way it made sense. The man was already deeply entrenched in a very illegal business, so I guess he was pretty much a god on his own ship. The most frightening thing that ever happened to me in my life happened when I was working on that very ship. It was a situation that made me realize exactly what sort of dangerous situation we were in, and not from the law of any government, from that man. 2 of the crew members had to make a repair on the ship. They were carrying a piece of sheet metal across the deck and carrying it in a very awkward manner over their heads as opposed to by the side. I was about to go over to offer them some help. Before I had a chance to, though, the man who was carrying it in the front slipped. He lost his grip on the piece of sheet metal, fell forward onto the deck. The guy in the back then naturally stumbled as well and lost his grip. The piece of sheet metal then slid forward and sliced into the neck of the crew member in front, halfway decapitating him. The second crewman jumped back from the sheet metal and nearly decapitated his partner. He began screaming as the other crewmen came up to the scene. The captain made his way onto the deck, obviously alerted by the commotion going on. He walked up to the 2 crewmen and looked down at them. The nearly decapitated man was still not dead, though. He was convulsing and bleeding all over the place. The captain reached into his jacket and pulled out his revolver. He shot the almost headless man twice, putting him out of his misery. When this happened, I immediately thought the captain was being merciful. Could I have possibly been wrong about him? But while this thought was going through my head, something happened that brought me back to my original opinion of him. He took the gun, shot and killed the crew member who was carrying the back of the piece of sheet metal, and that man fell down dead. The captain made us clean up the bodies and take up the sheet metal to finish the repair. The entire rest of the trip to Hong Kong I was terrified. I mean, to think that this man was heartless enough to kill someone just for making a mistake. I was walking on eggshells the entire time. When we got to port, I decided I'd rather be stranded and homeless in Hong Kong than to go back on that ship. I didn't feel safe until it left the port, though. I like the fog. I always have. But the fog that I like is fog on the land, not on the ocean. There's little more scary and confusing than a thick fog rolling in when you're out on the sea. I have a boat that I like to take out on the ocean as often as I can. It's a small boat, but it's got a kitchen, a small dining and family room, and lots of cots to sleep on. Very often, me and a couple of my friends will go out and just spend some time out on the ocean. Although I always keep a very close watch on the weather can always actually be pretty unpredictable. We had been out for a couple of nights when I made a really foolish navigational error. I really hadn't realized it at the time because we were having some beer and I was just trying to relax, but one of my buddies noticed something and pointed it out to me. I turned and looked and was immediately alarmed. We were very quickly moving towards what appeared to be a really thick fog bank, or more likely, It was also moving towards us, and very rapidly. Now this is where my complete stupidity kicked in. I had never actually been through a fog bank on the ocean before. I actually like when it's foggy on land. There's something about the creepiness of the atmosphere, especially when it's really thick. My friends, being as stupid as I was, thought it would be quite the adventure to steer into the fog and see what it was like. I'd like to think if we were all sober, then perhaps we wouldn't have considered doing something so foolish. As we entered this major block of fog, we began to see smaller wafts rising off the ocean. It was really very eerie. The fog got thicker and thicker as we got more into the fog bank. Soon we couldn't really see anything at all. We turned out all of our lights, except of course for the starboard and port navigation lights, which don't turn off. It was drunken stupidity, but it seemed pretty cool. It did get less cool, however, once we got lost in the fog. I mean, I had my GPS, so I wouldn't be lost on the ocean, but that didn't tell me how big the bank was, or what we had to do in order to get out of it. As more time passed, even though we were still clearly quite intoxicated, the coolness of our expedition gave way to some nervousness. We tried turning some lights back on at one point, but if you know anything about fog, you know that doesn't always help much. After a while, I began to make out something in the fog. It was hard to see at first, but definitely something was there. I immediately thought that perhaps another boat was out there, so I decided I should go and ring my foghorn. I went and did several times to warn the other ship I was there, just in case they couldn't see me. I waited to see if I would get a response, but I didn't. I blew the horn again, just in case they hadn't heard us the first time. After trying this for a few times, and not getting any sound at all in response, we thought about the possibility of the ship being adrift. We really thought about taking a closer look, but were not drunk enough that we didn't consider the dangers of getting too close to an adrift boat. We did our best to keep our distance, but tried to get close enough that we could hopefully see something. When we were passing the boat by, one of my drunk buddies decided he wanted to try something stupid. He went into the cabin and came back with a golf ball. We had played golf just before our trip. I knew what he was going to do, and immediately tried to stop him. However, it didn't work. He took the golf ball and hurled it at the other boat. We all heard the clanging noise as the ball smacked against the hull, and then the lights came on. After moments, 3 men sprinted onto the deck, all holding guns. They aimed right at us. We needed to get out of there as quickly as possible. A few shots rang out, though, before I was able to get to the controls and pick up speed. I thought we were going to get away easily, since my boat was much newer and a faster model than they had. Plus, I really doubted they would come after us. But I was wrong. They did try. All I could figure to do at that point was to try and use this fog to our advantage. I turned the lights back out. It was dangerous navigating like that before, but even more dangerous now that I was going much faster. I had to do what I had to, though, because I was convinced those 3 men wanted to kill us. After an hour, I was positive that we had lost them. However, I was too terrified to turn the lights back on right away. Eventually, when I did, I was very scared, until we were able to navigate a way out of the fog. Sometimes something that might seem adventurous is just plain dumb. This was really the creepiest thing I've ever had happen to me in my life. I come from a really long line of ocean fishermen, and of course, with overfishing, it gets harder and harder all the time to really make a great living off of this. Yearly, it seems like I have to go further and further out into the ocean just in order to get anything I can actually sell. It's definitely difficult having a smaller boat and competing with the larger commercial boats, but I really love the life, and I'm not willing to change my livelihood just because it gets a little more difficult. Anyway, I did have this one really bizarre experience once whilst I was out fishing. We had been out for a couple of days and not really doing the best job. We went out further and further. On the 3rd night, we had gone out pretty far on the ocean actually. We hadn't seen any other boats or ships in quite a long time, which I hoped was a good thing. Maybe we'd be lucky and be able to farm an area that wasn't getting too much attention from other ships. As night fell, the ocean was really calm. I was getting ready to get a little sleep when one of my shipmates came into the cabin and told me that there was a ship out ahead of us. It was coming right in our direction. Now, I wasn't exactly sure why he felt a need to tell me about this. Being out on the boat in the ocean isn't like being in a movie. It wasn't like we were really in any danger of being hit. We just move out of the way. But he insisted that I had to come see this ship. I went up on the deck, and when I did, I immediately understood why he'd wanted me to come out and look. The ship was a cruise ship, but it wasn't like any cruise ship that would still be in service today. It looked like it had to be at least 60 or 70 years out of date, and there were no lights on either. If we hadn't had a full moon, we would have had a much more difficult time even seeing it in the first place. I was curious. We tried to contact them on radio, but we didn't get any response. We weren't in a direct line of the ship, but I definitely wanted to get a closer look as it passed by. So we got as close as we could safely get to the ship. When it got closer, I noticed it was very obviously adrift, so we had to be extra careful. When the ship was pretty close to us, it was quite overwhelming. It was so large, but ominous, dark, and dead. There were no lights on, and it was obvious that this was a ghost ship, keeping in mind that I'm not referring to an actual ghost. I mean, the ship had been abandoned long ago, and who knew how long it could have been drifting out there. If you've never been in a small boat next to a huge ship, it would be hard for you to imagine what it was like. It was just ominous, and completely and utterly dwarfed our boat. If we got close to it, it would easily destroy us. We were like mice at the feet of a giant. "Holy shit," one of my friends said to me. I looked over at him and he pointed up at the ship's deck. I was shocked to see that there was someone standing there, a very young man. It looked like he must have been only in his early 20s. He was leaning over the railing, just staring at us. As we went along, he simply looked at us as we floated past. I tried to call out to the man, but received no response. He just stood there the entire time, looking down at us. We turned around to get another look at him once we had passed, but we didn't see him there the second time. We eventually went on after seeing this amazing spectacle, but it was one of the most profound experiences in my life. We reported all of this to the Coast Guard, but I honestly think they thought it was just a prank. I can't blame them much, honestly. I would have thought it was a prank too. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. All the copyright strikes are removed now, so we can get back to business as usual. I'm sorry I haven't been posting as much lately. I've just been really distracted with Monster Hunter Rise, I'll say. But I will get back to posting normally as soon as possible. Thanks to my friend KillerOrangeCat for letting me use the stories from his subreddit in this video. He's been helping me a lot by letting me use some of his stories lately, so be sure to check him out. I'll leave a link to his stuff in the description, and he does really good scary stories as well. They're all really unique, and most of them are original because he gets them himself personally through doing interviews and stuff, so if you guys would like to send in a story or you have a story you'd like me to read, links to all of my social media will be in the description below, including links to my Gmail, Facebook, and Twitter accounts. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is, the type of story it is, if it has one, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. If you're curious about the art used in this video, I have links to my artist friend in the description below. He makes really good stuff and he does commissions, so be sure to check him out if you like his stuff. And as always, links to the music used in the video will also be in the description in the order which it appears in. Thank you guys so much for watching, not too many updates this time, and I hope you guys have a great day.